So we have arrived at our final session in this series on refuge. And before we dive in, I want to take a moment to orient us, especially for those who might not have been along for every step of this journey. It's been a couple of months now that we've been exploring what Buddhist teachings call the Three Refuges, or the Three Jewels. And the word refuge comes from a root that means to return. And that's really at the heart of this series, knowing what sources of shelter we can return to when life gets hard. Not to hide out from the difficulties that, as we've been discussing, are just part of human life, but to meet them with more steadiness and care. So as a brief look back, the first refuge we explored was the refuge of awareness, or the Buddha in Dharma language, which is our capacity to wake up to what's happening and remember that we are not only the waves of our experience, but that vast oceanness that holds them. Second refuge is a refuge of truth, also called the Dharma in Buddhist teachings. And this is the relief that comes when we finally drop the rope in that tug of war with reality and let things be as they are. Miranda, you just demonstrated that so beautifully for us. And the third, which we explored last time, is the refuge of love, or Sangha. This is a refuge that we're familiar with around here. And we might also understand as community, or the truth of our belonging to the whole. So 3 refuges, 3 jewels to come home to. And today we'll explore how these 3 refuges can move from the realm of conceptual understanding into an embodied way of being, available even in the stormiest, foggiest, achiest moments of our lives. And I want to begin maybe a little paradoxically by naming something that I suspect many of us know from our own experience, but I can say for sure can be true for me. When we spend time like this, so going deep into practice and reflection, whether individually or together, there can be something that kind of opens, a softening or a sense of connecting to something that is vast and true and nourishing. And I hope and I trust that over these past sessions or in your own practice, you have experienced that directly. But I think there's also something else that can and does happen in the stretches in between. As we've been talking about, life unfolds unrelentingly. And faced with that continuous flow of experience, even the most beloved teachings can end up more like ornaments on a shelf, we might say, than tools in our pockets. So it's not because we don't value them, but it's because our nervous systems tend to fall back into that familiar groove of conditioning, often beneath the line of our moment-to-moment awareness. So that gap between even our most sincere aspirations or insights and our daily embodiment of them can be a very real one, right? We've been talking about this. And that's because it's a common human experience to find ourselves reaching for what we know isn't truly nourishing, so those false refuges, or slipping back into old patterns, even after we've touched moments of deeper understanding or clarity. And I want to point to this not to add any fodder for our inner critics, but to normalize it. Because when we are willing to name, as we do together here, truths like this that might otherwise fester into shame, it loosens the illusion that if we can't maintain presence and wisdom and equanimity all the time, that something's wrong with us. My friends, this is part of being human. It's just part of the deal. And when we name it, we can be more at ease with that, not hold it against ourselves, right? So today, as we consider what refuge means in real life, my intention is not to add any more beautiful ornamental ideas to a shelf, because we most need sources of refuge that are available in the midst of it. So not only in stillness or in sessions like this one, but in the grocery line when someone is unkind, or in the messy conversation with a loved one, or on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon that's just a little too full of responsibilities and we start to feel that stretch. So this is where the three refuges need to live, really woven into our days. Or they might remain like ornaments that we admire from a distance, but we never really hold them in our hands. So let's get specific, shall we? What does it actually look like to return to these refuges in the middle of a real day? So the refuge of awareness, I see this one as probably the most accessible because it's always just one conscious breath away. And what I've found in my own life and practice is that I return to awareness more often when I connect it to just the regular old moments of life. So nothing special. Like when I'm out on a walk and I feel the sun on my face after I've been lost in thought. And I notice that, that's awareness. Or when I'm in the middle of a doom scroll and my dog jumps on my lap and licks me. And suddenly there I am, I'm right back in my body. That's awareness. Or when I pause for a moment, washing the dishes, the most ordinary of tasks, and I feel the water on my hands. This is awareness too. These are all little invitations. Not to judge myself for drifting, for the fact that I have not been aware, but to simply notice, oh, here I am, and this is what's happening right now. There's a teaching that I love from the Zen tradition. It's called Shoshin, which means beginner's mind. And Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. I feel like the refuge of awareness in daily life is really the willingness to keep beginning. And this came up in our shares today too, right? So to keep meeting this moment as though it's fresh for the first time. And as I've said before, each time we return to what's here is the practice. So not the staying. The staying with what's here is not the practice, it's the coming back. It's the beginning again. And every ordinary moment of returning strengthens our capacity to draw on the refuge of awareness when we need it most. And then we have truth. And I will say, if awareness is the most accessible refuge, truth is often the trickiest, at least for me, because it tends to be most necessary in the exact moments that I am the least interested in truth. Like when life has plans that are counter to mine. I'm not so interested in the truth this moment. I want it to be how I want it to be, right? Or when my energy has ended and there's still a long list of responsibilities. That's a hard truth. Or when the news is a steady stream of heartbreak and outrage, as it so often is these days. These are the kind of moments when some part of me is most likely to be pulling on that rope in that tug of war, insisting that things should be different, or just bracing against what's here. But what I am coming to trust very slowly through a lot of futile tug of wars with reality is that the phrase, right now it's like this, is not giving up and it's not approving of whatever's happening. But it's a compassionate decision not to add unnecessary suffering on top of what's already here. And it's also the wisdom to remember that it all belongs. All of it is part of what it's like to be alive. Because the truth of truth is, we're never going to win that tug of war, right? As we have established, reality has a perfect record. And when we stop pulling, the energy that was tied up in fighting what's here becomes available again. And we can use it to respond to life more skillfully. So in real life, the refuge of truth might look like letting something be sad or heartbreaking without rushing to find a silver lining or numbing it, and just caring for that sadness in ourselves. Or it might be being stuck in traffic when you're already late, or your Zoom needs to update at the last minute before an important call, and you feel that charge of urgency, right? But instead of cursing the driver in front of you or technology for doing the technology thing, just breathing and acknowledging, okay, this is what's happening right now. In these moments, we don't have to like them, but something in us can soften. Not because reality has changed according to our preferences, but because we have stopped the futile struggle against it. And that gives us more space. And then there is the refuge of love, or Sangha. And in some ways, and we talked about this last time, as the Buddha taught, this may be the most fundamental refuge of all. Because when we really look, connection is everywhere. We are always belonging to something, to the breath that is moving through us, to the earth beneath our feet, and to the people, each other, and creatures and ecosystems that make our lives possible. Sangha is not something we have to manufacture, but it's something that we learn to recognize. And it's not always at the retreat, or even in the circle like this one, or the insightful conversation that shifts something. Sometimes it's a lot subtler. Could be the stranger who passes by and says good morning, and they mean it. Or exchanging gazes with a bird or a deer. Just have that moment, no fear, just connection. Or it's the friend who just sends you a quick, lighthearted message to say you crossed their mind. Just that. These may be short moments, but they are not small things. And I want to point to a piece that can be a less visible, more challenging part of this practice for some of us, and I will raise my hand here. And this is allowing ourselves to receive the belonging. So not just to offer or look for connection, but to take it in. To be honest with you, it took me a long time, decades, to understand that receiving is part of the ecology of belonging. And the more we open to it, the more we see and feel how deeply interconnected we always have been. Hmm. So, as I do, I've been reflecting really deeply on what it means to live these refuges in daily life. And it will come as no surprise to you that as part of that, I turn to nature. And throughout this series, we've drawn on a lot of forest wisdom, my friends, but this time it was the ocean that had something to teach about refuge. So last weekend, I went to a nearby island called Hornby Island to witness the annual herring run, which we touched on this a bit last time. It's one of those spectacular ecological events when millions of herring come to spawn and the whole coastline comes alive. So I, in my great good fortune, spent several glorious hours just immersed in this abundance of gulls and eagles and sea lions and sparkly seaweed covered in thousands of tiny little herring eggs. Ooh, just feeling so grateful and connected and part of it all. And as I made my way back to the shoreline, it was a very low tide. And I came across some tidal pools, which I don't often see on the part of the island I live in. So I very happily took an opportunity to hang out with them for a while. Now, tidal pools, they sit right at the edge. They're kind of exposed to sun and wind and waves and temperature. So by any measure, a pretty vulnerable place to exist. And yet, inside them, there is this remarkable abundance of life. Sea anemones and urchins and starfish and tiny little fish and crabs and kelp and algae. I could go on. I'll stop there. But I found myself wondering, how is it possible that so much life could thrive in such an exposed place? And then I realized it's because the pool itself is a refuge. It's not a hiding place from the ocean or the elements, but it's a held space within them. The tidal pool does not resist the waves or the weather. It receives them and it lets those big swells, water and wind, fill and flush and renew, and then it holds what remains. And as I marveled at this, it occurred to me that in some ways, we are like little tidal pools. You know, life keeps coming. We've been talking about this. There are and always will be waves of difficulty, of joy, of uncertainty, loss, beauty. We cannot stop that tide, right? But we can practice becoming the kind of held space that can receive it all and serve as shelter for whatever that tide brings our way. And as beautiful an illustration of what is possible as tidal pools are, I want to name something that I think is as important as anything else in this whole series. Okay, are you ready for this? We will forget. Every one of us will have moments, probably way more than we'd like, where the false refuges lure us in again, or where we are completely the waves and we have entirely forgot about the ocean. We will reach for our phones when we would have been better served by the breath. We'll lie awake at 3 a.m. completely certain that the story is real and permanent and definitely about us, right? We will scratch the itch. And what I really hope you can take in is that this is not any sign of a personal fault or failure or of not doing it right. This is part of the deal. We're human. So the practice of refuge isn't a new standard of perfection to hold ourselves to. It's a direction that we keep returning towards with kindness, with humor when we can manage it, and with the same compassion that we would offer a dear friend who we know is doing their honest to goodness best, even if it's messy or imperfect, right? So before we move into our meditation, I want to offer one final thought. I know I've had a lot to say today. So these three refuges, awareness and truth and love, are offered to us from an ancient tradition. They are well tested, and they have held countless beings through countless storms. But they are only truly ours when they live in your body, when they have a felt address, a familiar texture, a remembered sensation, something you can recognize and return to from your direct experience. So, this is what we're going to explore in our practice today. Not thinking about refuge, but sensing it. And feeling what it's like in the body when awareness is here. And when truth is allowed. And when we remember how deeply we belong. Because each time we touch that experience, we strengthen the inner map that helps us find our way back, right? That helps us to return, no matter the conditions of life. So let's practice, my friends. And I'll invite you to really take your time choosing a posture today. Let's begin this practice of deep sensing right now by sensing into what the body needs to feel supported. And whatever that is, giving yourself permission to respond to what's here. And when you're ready, you might close the eyes, soften the gaze. And we'll begin just by noticing that the body is breathing. And without changing anything about it, just tuning into the symphony of sensations and movement that are the breath. What's it like to be in this body, breathing this breath? What about this breath? And again, I'm drawing the attention now to gently scan through the body. Just noticing any areas of tightness or tension, with a light touch inviting a softening, loosening. Remembering that the earth beneath you can hold all the parts of you. Can you let yourself be held? And recognizing now that awareness is here. The awareness that knows you are sitting. The awareness that can feel that movement of the breath. The awareness that senses sound and sensation and thoughts and emotions appearing and disappearing. And as you direct the awareness towards itself, with a quality of opening, invite it to fill you. Breathing in awareness. Breathing out awareness. Returning to that vast, spacious awareness that's always here. And now gently bringing the attention to whatever is present in your experience right now. You might notice sensations in the body, a mood or a feeling tone in the heart, quiet or restlessness in the mind. Rather than trying to change anything, just acknowledging what's here. And no matter what the quality of your experience, you might offer yourself the phrase, right now, it's like this. Making room for whatever is here. And noticing what happens in the body when nothing is being resisted. Returning to the truth of this moment again and again and again. And now letting the field widen. And remembering that you are not practicing alone. This Sangha and countless others are sitting just as you are. And noticing what it's like in the body to feel that field of care. Bringing that sense of connection and belonging into your heart and your felt sense experience. If it helps, you might put a hand on the heart and really connect to it. And widening the intention further, feeling the support of the earth beneath you and the sky above you. With every breath interbeing with countless forms of life. This body made of earth and water and sunlight. Returning to your belonging within this incredible web of life. And returning again now to the simple rhythm of the breath. The body resting, awareness wide open. You might imagine yourself as a small tidal pool along the shoreline, open to the shifting weather, waves of experience moving through. Not a single thing to manage, just receiving and releasing. Resting in a field of awareness, truth, and love. We'll close with a poem called The Most Important Thing by Julia Fehrenbacher. I am making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness where everything is forgiven, everything allowed. A quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out in without hurry. where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fiercely friendly place I can claim as my very own. I am throwing arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault-finding, falling apart, unfinished parts. Knowing every seed and weed, every drop of rain, has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a hot cup of tea, gather around the warmth of my own blazing fire. I will howl if I want to, knowing this flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself, where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance, a shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper hallelujah to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom. And emerging slowly from the practice, my friends, you might invite a few deeper, fuller breaths, maybe a bit of movement. Mm. Thank you for your practice.